Park Avenue family, we just watched episode 2, season 1 of The Chosen last night. It was a great crowd again. Met in the atrium because the air conditioner had gone out in the yard, but there was a real neat feel about it. I don't know how you felt. It just felt like a family getting together and watching a movie. So I just...
It was a little bit smaller.
Yeah.
Not smaller people, but just the cluster.
Yeah. It was great to see the kids out front, and I'm not sure how much they were watching the show, but they were all together, and even though they may not be taking in every bit of dialogue, just being with their parents, watching a show about Jesus. I mean, they're gonna remember that. And so if you have kids out there and you're thinking they're not going to get anything out of this, I think they do. I really think that it's making an impression on them.
I mean, besides you sit them in front of the screen at home. Why not sit them in front of a screen watching Jesus?
Exactly. Right. Yeah. And I know when my kids were little, it just meant a lot for me for them to be in the presence of other Christians. And so, well, that's kind of a little extra here. We want to talk about episode 2. They were celebrating Shabbat or Sabbath, and that was kind of the backdrop for all the other action that was taking place. But you've seen it several times, and what are some things that jumped out to you that you want to...
The thing that I got, this is jumping to the end of the episode, the thing that I got emotional about last night watching it kind of surprised me. Because I don't know if I really picked up on it at any other point. I'm sure I did, but watching it a third time, when Jesus knocks on the door at Mary's house, and Mary's hosting the traditional Shabbat Sabbath dinner, that the conversation preceding that was saving a seat for Elijah.
Yeah.
And she's like, I don't know if I'm following tradition the right way. Were we supposed to have a spot, not have a spot? And there's the beauty of, remembering the story of Elijah, the transformation, transfiguration, and all those stories. But then Jesus coming in, and they have a spot.
Does he take Elijah's seat? I was wondering.
I don't know where he sat.
Okay, I was wondering if he sat where Elijah was supposed to sit, which would be totally appropriate for sure.
So that was like just one of those moments of like a whole new perspective of bringing truth to life, So.
Yeah, and then leaving that space open in our lives for Jesus to come in. Yeah. I mean, sometimes we just get so packed up with everything that we don't even, when Jesus appears at our door, we don't have room for you, sorry. We're like the innkeeper.
And Jesus was standing there with Mary, and he's like, do you mind if I come in?
Yeah.
Like, how many times are we doing that? Like we know Jesus is there, but we haven't even said, "No, come on in." So.
Yeah, and again, Jesus wasn't in this episode that much.
Right.
At this point, he is so unassuming right now. He's just kind of getting to know one another. It's obvious that he has a relationship with, I think it was James and Thaddeus that were at the Shabbat meal with Mary. So something's going on in the background. He's already starting to talk to people about who he is and all, but just very unassuming, and he just appears. I thought it was neat, just the community feel that was established within the Shabbat, where people just gathering together and really had some significance. And there was a ritual, and I thought it was cool that as Mary was reading the liturgy, so to speak, of the Shabbat, then it cut over to Nicodemus, and he was doing the same thing. And just, rich and poor, doesn't make any difference. Both of these different communities celebrating the Shabbat. And then it just, we're not really much into liturgy or ritual, in the Church of Christ. I mean, we try to mix things up, but it really, maybe there's something about that.
Yeah. There seems to be an anchor, per se, the rhythmic. I mean, everything's a season. And even a day is a season, and a week is a season. Like, there's these rhythmic things, and it was just a reminder. So this may be totally out of context, but I learned something new out of a different book. This wasn't in The Chosen, but the Shabbat, traditional, they have a saucer, and then they have the cup, and they pour wine into that cup, and it overflows into the saucer. Yeah. Just remembering God's outpouring and how it overflows into the cup and onto this plate, and everything comes to a stop. And it's that is so essential to remember. God has poured out so much into all of our lives, rich, poor, that like if we stop and realize how much He's poured out, like we can continue to pour into others.
Right. Yeah, a good preview for my sermon Sunday. As we experience the love of God, it should overflow into loving others. Mary, of course, is a central figure in this, and one of the great statements. It's not in the Bible, but just inspiring. Yeah. What does she say? I was one way, and now
I'm completely different.
And now I'm completely different. Yeah. And the thing that happened in between,
in the
middle, was Him. Yeah, that was, and I'd seen that on previews before, and I thought, wow, that's really a cool statement. But to see it in the whole context of her explaining to Nicodemus what happened, it was like that's what made the difference. And she doesn't even know His name. She doesn't know how it happened, but she knows that encounter with Jesus was what had transformed her. Taking those demons away from her, and so that's.
Yeah,
it's a beautiful.
It's that classic before and after picture we always put up, like
exactly,
and you did something. Yeah. Typically, we do something in the before and after transformations, but like when you can't explain, like I didn't do anything, and I'm completely different. Like it's like, oh, like how do you begin to explain this gift?
Yeah, that's the before and after. It's kind of like the the diet promotions. See a guy, and then afterwards, and of course they're wanting you to think that what's in between is their program, and what is in between us from going from lifeless or hopeless or no peace into experiencing joy and peace and the transformation. Jesus is the thing that's in the middle. And I continue to love the portrayal of Nicodemus. He's just curious. He's just he's amazed. And it's really funny because at first he thinks that he's the one that has cast out those demons, and Mary says, "It wasn't you."
He's trying to get credit for his job.
Right. Because when he left Mary, didn't seem like he had any effect, and he didn't. But Nicodemus is open to the fact that maybe there's a power that's greater than him. And this is really, I think in a few episodes, I haven't watched it, but someone told me that this the episode of the encounter of Jesus and Nicodemus is central to one of the episodes coming up. And so it's really setting up Nicodemus as just being really curious and expecting and wondering and open to the teachings of Jesus.
I think that curiosity, between Nicodemus and his wife, that little scene, because Nicodemus has fallen into this religious duty. And he knows he's just tired and worn out. And he tells his wife that statement to some degree of like, sure, honey, I'll keep it short, let's go honor God and kind of do this, whole religious duty thing.
Right.
And so I think that's a curiosity, that hunger in him that he's like, this religious thing that I'm doing isn't working.
Yeah.
But how true is that in our life, that we do the religious thing because we know it makes us good moral people. But we still haven't met the thing in the middle.
Right. And what's going to make the difference is Jesus, not the rule keeping or those other things. So it's great. Peter at the end, looks like Peter's headed for trouble. I don't know what's going to happen with that. Peter's getting himself in some hot water. Kind of left on a little cliffhanger there. But again, portraying Peter as kind of the one who's always on the verge of getting in trouble. So we'll see what happens there. But again, another great episode. I told you last night, this is one of the greatest Wednesday night activities I think we've had. I've been here 26 years.
May not be the greatest. It may just because everybody coming out of hiding.
It is.
But yeah.
How refreshing for us to be back together as a group. And so if you're not joining us, I encourage you to watch it at home, and of course you can do that as an individual experience, but there's something really, really powerful about us being together as well. So Wednesday night, 6:30, I think you've promised ice cream next week. Is that right?
There's ice cream.
There may
be banana splits, there may be Bluebell, there may be Snickers.